They called you a monster, a demon, a creature lurking in the dark. They whispered behind your back, pointed fingers, and wrapped their fear around you like chains. But here's the truth, they'll never speak aloud. Monsters don't fear the shadows. We built them. Every sneer, every betrayal, every time they pushed you down, they weren't taming you, they were feeding you. They thought they could shape you into something weaker, something smaller, something they could control. But they forgot one thing. You are not the hunted. You are the storm waiting to break. They tried to drown you in their labels, make you believe their lies. Too much, too intense, too ruthless. What they really meant was too strong for us to handle. They wanted you to shrink, to soften, to beg for their acceptance. But the dark doesn't kneel for the light. It doesn't ask permission. It swallows it whole. They pushed you into the abyss, hoping it would break you. Instead, you made it your home. And now, when they look into your eyes, they see the truth, the fear they tried to chain you with. It belongs to them now. So let them run, let them tremble, let them pray for mercy, because the monster they created isn't hiding anymore. Their screams, they aren't warnings. They're music, a symphony of regret. And tonight, you conduct the orchestra. They were always afraid of you, not because you did anything wrong, but because you refused to be what they wanted. They needed a villain, a beast to blame for their own weaknesses. So they painted you in the darkest colors, twisted your strength into something ugly. When you stood your ground, they called it aggression. When you refused to be used, they called you cruel. When you walked away from their lies, they called you heartless. Every label they threw at you wasn't a reflection of who you were. It was a confession of their own fear. Too intense, too ruthless. Those weren't insults. They were cries for help. They wanted you to be smaller, softer, easier to control. They wanted you to beg for their approval, to mold yourself into their fragile little world. But you didn't fit inside their cardboard kingdom. You were never meant to, and that terrified them. Because if you didn't need them, if you could exist outside their rules, then their entire illusion of power would crumble. So they gaslit you, tried to convince you that your fire was a flaw. You're too much. No, they were too little. You're broken. No, you were never meant to be something as fragile as them. You need to change. No, they needed you to change, because the truth was too much for them to handle. You didn't choose the dark. It chose you, not as a curse, but as a gift. There was a moment, one defining moment, where you realized what you truly were. Maybe it was the lover who smiled in your face while stabbing you in the back. Maybe it was the friend who traded your trust for gossip. Maybe it was the system that saw your pain and called it madness. Whatever it was, it cracked something inside you, not in a way that made you weaker. No, it did the opposite. It stripped away the illusion, peeled back the layers of who they wanted you to be, and left you standing there, raw and real. They thought they had tamed you, had shaped you into something manageable, but they never saw what was growing beneath the surface. They mistook your patience for weakness, your silence for submission. They thought they were dealing with a lost stray wolf. They didn't realize they were standing in front of an apex predator. The day you woke up to that truth was the day you stopped playing by their rules, the day you stopped caring about their opinions, the day you stopped waiting for permission. And now, they can feel it. The shift, the weight of their own mistakes pressing down on them. Because the thing they tried to bury, the thing they tried to kill, it didn't die. It evolved. It sharpened its claws. It learned how to hunt. And now, when they look into your eyes, they don't see the person they used to manipulate. They see what they created. They see what they feared all along. They see you. They wanted you to heal, but what they really meant was they wanted you to forget. Forget the scars they left, the wounds they laughed at, the moments they twisted the knife and called it love. They wanted you to soften, to let go of your anger, to kneel at the altar of their comfort. But why should you? Why should you be the one to bend, to shrink, to make yourself smaller so they can sleep easier at night? You laughed in their faces, not a laugh of joy, but of revelation, because you finally understood. The darkness they feared in you wasn't a weakness. It was your strength. They called you dangerous, not because you were a threat, but because you had stopped asking for permission. You no longer played by their rules, no longer begged for acceptance, and that terrified them. The ones who once mocked you, dismissed you, ignored you, they trembled now, because there was nothing more unsettling to them than seeing you unchained, seeing you walk through the world with the full weight of who you are. They had spent so long trying to tame you, to mold you into something digestible, but now, there was no leash, no cage, no guilt holding you back. And that's when the real fun began. You never needed to chase them. No, they would come to you. They always do. Guilt has a funny way of leading people straight into their own demise. A single glance, a quiet smirk, a silence that stretches just a second too long, and suddenly, they start unraveling. You don't have to lift a finger. They do it to themselves. The weight of their own sins starts pressing down on them, their own betrayals twisting like a knife in their ribs. They called you a monster, but the truth is, they were the ones who built the labyrinth. You just let them walk themselves into it, and oh how sweet their panic tastes. The ones who once stood tall, who once threw stones and walked away laughing, now they hesitate, now they stutter, now they glance over their shoulders like prey, sensing a predator in the shadows. They hear the echoes of their own cruelty, replaying like a ghost in their minds. Their nightmares taste like champagne on your tongue, because this isn't revenge. This is justice. This is balance. This is the universe finally tipping the scales back in your favor. Do you hear that? The drip of their confidence dissolving, the creak of their egos snapping under the weight of their own arrogance. They thought they could control you, thought they could break you, thought they could write the story where they were the hero, and you were nothing more than a villain lurking in the background. But they forgot one thing. Monsters don't hide in the shadows. We own them. You don't drag them into the shadows. No, that would be too kind. You drag them into the light where the world can see them, where their masks crack and their carefully built illusions shatter like glass. They always thought they were untouchable, that their sins would stay buried, that the truth would remain locked away in the dark. But tonight, the dark doesn't keep their secrets. Tonight, the dark puts them on display. You stand before them, calm, unshaken, the weight of their accusations now meaningless. You made me a monster, you whisper, your voice steady, controlled, lethal. Then let me show you what that really means. And as you speak, the room tilts, the air thick with the scent of fear. Not yours, theirs. The ones who once laughed at your pain, who built their thrones on your suffering, who thought they could name you, shape you, break you. Now their laughter is gone, their confidence evaporated. Their sins spill out like entrails, raw and exposed, and for the first time they realize it was never you they feared. It was the truth. The crowd watches, not with horror, but with fascination. They're not looking at a monster. They're looking at justice, at balance being restored, at a reckoning long overdue. And in that moment, you see it, the shift, the crumbling of their empire, built on deception. The very people who once turned away, who once believed their lies, now see the cracks, the rot, the undeniable ugliness beneath the mask. And they don't gasp, they don't run, they watch, they listen, because monsters don't hide. We throne. They drop to their knees, their voices trembling, their hands shaking. They beg for mercy, for forgiveness, for things to go back to the way they were. But there's no going back. You don't give them comfort. You don't give them an escape. You give them a mirror. Meet the real monster, you say, and you watch as realization dawns in their eyes. It was never you. It was them. It was always them. Their empire of lies collapses, brick by brick, a kingdom built on deceit, turned to dust, and in its place, something new rises, not built on whispers and false smiles, but on truth, on power, on the unshakable force of a person who refuses to be caged. This isn't revenge. Revenge is small, fleeting. This is evolution, a new world order. And in this world, the ones who thought they held the chains now wear them. The ones who thought they controlled the story now sit in silence, forced to hear the truth they spent so long trying to bury. And you don't need to prove anything anymore. You don't need to fight for a place in their world, because it's not their world anymore. It's yours. Let them fear you. Let them whisper. Let them tremble. Let them cling to their fragile illusions of control. They spent their lives trying to break you, to shrink you, to mold you into something palatable, something small, something weak. But they failed. And now you take that fear, that doubt, that shame they tried to drown you in, and you drink it like fire. You let it burn through every lie they ever told, every label they ever forced on you. You don't run from the dark. You are the dark, and the dark doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't apologize. It swallows everything in its path. They called you a monster because they couldn't understand you, because they saw something they never could be. Power without chains, strength without fear. But the story isn't theirs to tell anymore. This time the ending is yours, and in this ending the dark bows to you, because gods and monsters, they're the same thing. The only difference, who holds the pen. They spent years weaving their lies, dressing them up as truths, whispering them into the ears of the weak. But here's the real question. What's sharper, their deception, or the fangs they forced you to grow? Because every scar they left on you became a blade, every betrayal a lesson, every loss a weapon. And now you are not just armed, you are unstoppable. They thought drowning you in darkness would break you, but instead you adapted. They fed you shadows, hoping you would wither, but you didn't just survive. You feast on light now. Their fear, their regret, their desperate attempts to rewrite history. It fuels you. They don't get to tell the story anymore. They don't get to define you. And when they close their eyes at night, when they toss and turn, tormented by the echoes of their own guilt, let them know one thing. You don't just haunt their dreams, you own them.